Good afternoon. My name is Joe Bandel, and I am the last Rosicrucian. Today we're going to begin a discussion of the Spanish Inquisition, witchcraft, and Satanism as a perversion of Catholicism and the hatred and the distortions that were going on. I will mostly be reading some of this material, which I've translated, uh, but I'll interject when I feel it's needed. A lot of this is pretty clearly stated the way it is. So, in his immortal Witch's Hammer, Sprenger stopped short of the question as to why there were relatively more women practitioners of witchcraft than men, so that of 10,000 witches, hardly a single man was condemned. This says 10,000. I don't know what the actual count, if there's updates to that, but a lot of women were murdered during the Inquisition. There were a number of reasons for this. It was well known that there were three things that nothing could stop, either for good or evil: the tongue, especially that of the priest, which in his nature is something between a man and a woman, and that of a woman. Furthermore, women were gullible, and because the devil principally worked against faith, he most especially liked to attack them. They were also susceptible to suggestion due to the fallibility of their constitutions. Above all, however, they had indecent tongues and needed to share with other women what they knew of the dark arts. Most deeply of all, however, the reason lie in the limited faith of women, which, according to Sprenger, was proven by the etymology of the word. He has a big, long Latin thing, because it is said that the woman, and less because she always has a smaller faith to keep. Sprenger widely expressed himself on the topic of the depravity and sin of women, of their jealousy and impatience, their ambition, lust, and lack of faith, their inconsistency, and their vengefulness. He sounds like quite a misogynist, to tell you the truth. Historically, all kingdoms have fallen because of women, and with melancholy resignation, the sad diabolist dreamed that a world without woman would be a realm of the gods. To bolster his view of women, he told the story of a man whose wife had been drowned. He looked for her upstream, for in life she always talked back and acted so much against reason in every way that naturally she would have gone upstream, even in death. Okay. Additionally, he cites Sirach and Saint Chrysostomus, who called marriage a constant torture, and Seneca, who said in one of his tragedies, "Woman loves or hates. For her there is no third. The weeping of a woman is a lie. She has two kinds of tears, either true pain or deception and artifice. If a woman thinks at all, she thinks badly." In conclusion, the learned inquisitor says, out of all this, it can be concluded that women are most especially susceptible to the vice of magical heresy, and that one must give thanks to the highest who has protected men from such vice. Sprenger made things easy on himself, but the issue is not so simple, despite the fact that his views on women demonstrate great knowledge. More to the point, we should seek the reason for all this in the physical conditions women found themselves in at that time. Immediately one's attention is drawn to the strange disease in those days which was called possession, the seed of which almost everyone in the Middle Ages had within themselves. Possession, or demonomania, appears to have been a variation of a mental illness of a and especially epileptic nature, which occurred frequently in the Middle Ages. It was accompanied by clairvoyance and somnambulism. The subject was led by visions and fell into terrible paroxysms, the description of which might appear to be monstrous exaggerations to modern people, if they weren't so well documented. Now, I don't know. Take a look at the channeling that's going on in by the New Agers today, and that's kind of possession. Uh, Things come around, I guess. At the lowest level, where there is only a disposition toward all of this, the symptoms appear to be produced voluntarily and artificially by the use of narcotics and ointments. This level probably forms the basis for all demonic phenomena associated with witches. So Larry's basically suggesting that drugs, hallucinations, that this is what it is, probably the basis of a lot of this stuff. The witch was born as such. From the beginning, everything was inverted to her. The highest was the lowest, right was left, the front was behind. The complete inversion of basic values placed the afflicted individual entirely at odds with the nature of things. These were the first symptoms of possession. The witch was not outside of herself and not tormented by this at all, while a man would not succumb to the devil of his own free will. In the paroxysm of possession, this reversal of all directions could be seen perfectly as daylight. The body of one possessed became shaped like a sphere or wrapped up like a ball of twine. First he would stand up on his toes and then throw himself backwards onto his head and face in such a way that his back formed the shape of a bow. In a flash, the situation would change and the one possessed would lie on his back so that his arms and legs were held up in the air like interwoven reeds. Their hair stood on end like it wanted to fly out in all directions. The person would always walk backwards or would continuously go around in a circle from right to left, with his face turned outward. You got to admit, this is some strange behaviors. And unheard of flexibility and ability to bend was characteristic of the witch in her ecstatic state. Her limbs could intertwine like pliable rods. Her whole shape could be stretched in a superhuman fashion, only to shrink back again. Her specific gravity was altered while she was in the ecstatic state. Her body would not sink in water. Often she became lighter than air, rose up, and hovered in the air for several minutes. Often those possessed could be seen quickly scampering over the roofs of cloisters. They climbed up the walls and playfully rocked back and forth on the thinnest tree branches that even a bird would cause to break. Okay, I'm going to interject here and say he's describing things that people were seeing. There were some strange behaviors going on. There was a lot of mental instability, mental and emotional instability that was going on. This is scary stuff. It doesn't mean it's demonic, it doesn't mean it's satanic, but it means that there was some mental illness here. The bodily surface of those persons possessed by Satan was outwardly signified by a mark or sign. These were small places on the skin, never larger than a pea, which were insensitive and without blood or life. Sometimes, but only rarely, they were red or black spots. It was also rarely seen that they were accompanied by an indentation in the skin. In general, they went unseen and were usually found on the genitals. If one stuck a needle into one of them, no blood would come out, no pain would be felt, which was the case whenever any other part of the body was pricked. De Lancre, one of the most brilliant diabolists, to whom the task fell in 1609 to cleanse an entire province of witches, the Basque country, found that around 3,000 persons were marked in this way. Very often, several such marks were found on the eyelids, back, breasts, and sometimes, but rarely, the mark actually changed places on the body. Wow. And I see, well, I got another minute here, I can do more. It was not, however, the witch's mark alone which identified the witch. By means of the magical abilities of her soul, which controlled her entire being, her physical sensitivity was uncommonly low, or even sometimes absent. She was completely impervious to the most terrible tortures, and the examples of complete catalepsy and insensitivity were extraordinarily frequent in the literature of demonology, even while being subjected to the strappado or the rack, about which the executioners would say, "You are going to be stretched so thin that the sun will shine through you." She felt nothing. She laughed or slept. This maleficium taciturnatus, crime of silence, that according to the witch's hammer was made available to his elect by the devil, was thought to be connected to a strange organic healing power. This was also sometimes ascribed to an amulet, and for this reason their witches were always stripped naked and their bodies smoothly shaved before the tortures were begun. This power caused the witches to heal the most severe wounds quickly and easily, wounds which would have naturally led to death in many cases. There were many witch trials in which the witch was tortured 4 or 5 times in succession, but where she continually slept on the ladder, her eyes so tightly shut that the reporter had to do quite a bit to get her to open just one eye. In these ecstatic and mediumistic states, all laws that otherwise pertained to an organism were reversed or entirely suspended. The power of the witch to resist fire was so well known and so common that Sprenger entirely dispensed with the test of fire. Delio, who was a highly reliable informant in these matters, reported that a witch remained uninjured even after the horrible torture of the pitch boot. There is all the less reason to doubt the correctness of these reports due to the fact that similar cases have been published in most recent times. Among the most well-known depictions is that of Wallace, the defense of a spiritualist, where Mr. Holmes stuck his head into fire without even singeing his hair. The alteration of specific gravity in conjunction with ecstatic states also perfectly corresponds to reality, although it is as inexplicable as the characteristics described above. That's all I have time for here. Subscribe to the channel if you're interested. Share this with others, and visit my website at www.thelastrosicrucian.is for more blogs and stories. Thank you.